Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me via Zoom are Jerry Arnell and Carrie Linklater. The secretary today is Crystal Harland, and the assessor is Matthew Baracus. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking in the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and its city administration. It makes its decision on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order to be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value reclassification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 1 through 8 on their docket today. Mrs. Harlan, please affirm the assessor's and applicant's testimony.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Assessor, would you please state your full name?
Matthew Barocus.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Henry Dupont.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just before starting, I'd like to say that we have a full agenda today with some complex properties, and I would certainly appreciate both parties being concise in their presentations. So, thank you. And so the first property today is 55 Gary Street. And so, Mr. Baracus, you can proceed.
All right, thank you very much. File 24-3089, roll number 12092768000, 55 Gary Street. Total assessed value 122,567,000. 100,183 of it is residential, and the rest is a split between taxable and exempt commercial space. So to be concise, I checked the applicant's brief. If anything, unless anything has changed, we agree on the residential portion. So I'll tailor my presentation to the other income streams.
Okay, thank you.
So it's a Res M. We've got 90 premises, 20 stories. Effective year built 1986 to 88. Reinforced concrete frame. It's at the corner of, well, I mean, it's behind the Fort Garry Hotel, so it's like Assiniboine and Gary. It's pretty big. So go to page 2. Hasn't been any issue in getting the mailers from them, so it's great. No subject sale history, subject property leases for whatever reason isn't showing up here. We've got the subject market income. So we've got the apartment income workup on page 3. So it works out to 100,183,000. Because it doesn't appear that there's a dispute on that, I'll just move on past that portion. So on pages 4 and 5 shows the OFB premises. So there's a bunch of commercial spaces to rent in here, and the rents they range pretty much between $5 and I say between like $5 and $9. There's the odd, really small kiosk premise, like 31 square feet. It's going to have a higher rent just because of the size of it. But for the most part, the rents are quite low. We've got our OFB office workup at the bottom of page 5. 12% vacancy, 3% expenses, 7% cap rate, 8,333,243. Couple restaurants in there on page 6 as well. You can see the rents, what they range from about 6 to 10 approximately. 15% vacancy, 3% expenses, 7.6% cap rate. And we got the capitalized value of 1,044,000. Parking, they also have a parking spots, indoor parking. We got 185 net per unit. 235 spots, so that comes out to 521,700. On the net operating income, 7% capitalized value, 7,453,000 rounded. And we also have some retail here on page 8. You can see the range of the rents pretty similar to what the office rents were. And you can see the work up here, 5% vacancy, 3% expenses, 6.9% on the cap, 827,000 on the retail. And then we've got the exempts portion, the government rents. The government income stream just section out on its own, so that valuation is taken into consideration under its appropriate class and liability. So you can see again, it's got the same 12%, 3%, and 7% on the workup for these, and the rents. Again, they're in the $5 to $9 range on these ones on page 9. So you got the overall income value summaries on page 10 and 11. So that's just basically a summary of what I just went through. So we got some rent comparables for the restaurant. Just was looking for some nearby ones in the Broadway Assiniboine area on a net basis. Got $9 on one of the smaller ones, one of the larger ones actually. I got 18, $28, $19, $11. And so for the restaurant rents, we're at, we're between $6 and $9 on those ones. Sorry, just flipping around here on the next page, page 13. For office, we were in that $5 to $9 range. Again, rent comps are much higher for the office and retail stuff. So it looks like our rents are supported by the rents in the market. In fact, we're lower. It does make sense. These spaces are kind of like tucked inside of the building. They don't have the best exposure to the street. So it does make sense that these spaces would have lower rents than they do. So then on page 14, we got our residential comps, but that's because that's not in dispute. I'm not going to really belabor the point. Page 15, this is our chart of cap rates. Just the overall ranges from the 20th to 80th for all the property types. Page 16, municipal act excerpts page. 17 shows the overall income statement that the city received and a list of expenses all lumped together between commercial and residential. So yeah. Okay, so we are on page 22. This is some exterior shots of the building from geoimagery and some pictures from the website. Continuing on down page 24 and so forth. So we just purely modeled valuation on this one. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Dupont?
Yes, the beginning, you showed the page 1, I think. Number of parking. You show indoor parking 235. Is that the full parking, residential and commercial?
That would be the commercial rentable parking. That should just encapsulate the commercial.
And your commercial parking income approach is page 7. So you have a rent of 185, and that's a net basis. So that's after the 40% expense ratio or after expenses.
That would be after expenses. I mean, if you go to page 17, it shows that they're collecting 650,151. So we're quite a bit lower than that. I'm not clear what the expenses are, but I would assume that at 650 on page 17 would be the gross amount. So the net amount would be lower than that 650. But I don't have any expenses. I didn't see any that I could simply allocate to the parking structure, so I didn't make any changes.
So at page 17, it shows commercial parking revenue at 650, and that's a gross.
Yep.
And would you accept that normally we allow 40% of expenses?
I mean, I don't have the greatest experience with commercial parking just because of the section we're in. So I couldn't just accept. I couldn't just accept. I'd have to look into it further.
So your evaluation, you don't know, you're just using a net rent 185.
Yeah, net model rent.
You don't know what that would be a gross rent?
No, I don't.
Be about double if it's 50% expense ratio, it'd be 370.
I mean, if
So-
that's what it was, I don't have that in my brief. If that's something that's in your presentation, we could always cross that bridge when we get there.
No, would you agree that the rent at 300 or more is way too high?
I don't have a rent of 300 though. My rent's 185.
That's a net.
That's
So
right.
and a gross would be double or so of that.
I mean, that's what you're saying. That's not what I'm saying.
So you don't know what the expense ratio was applied, and you don't know what an expense ratio should be.
No, I don't.
Have you investigated any of the vacancies and the various income stream?
I did not know.
Did you analyze any of the expenses that may be applicable to each of the income streams or leases?
Well, I mean, looking at this mailer, it looks like all the expenses are bundled together, residential and commercial. So I did just go with the model.
No, you're saying they're bundled together. You go back to your page 17.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. The provided various uh, income approach or statements, and they had one for commercial only. Did you see that or analyze that?
On my page 17.
No, the page 17 is the combined statement. Uh,
Yeah, all
did
I
you?
have is the combined one. So I mean, they have the income separated, but then as I roll through it here, it's just it looks like it's combined. So I just went with the model on this one.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, thanks.
Okay, Ms. Linklater, any questions?
Um, just a couple, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Barakas.
Right.
So I think you had indicated earlier in your presentation that this was all model driven, correct?
Yes.
So you did not make any changes?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. And just in regards to the restaurant on page 6, sorry, I'm just scrolling up here. I just wanted to confirm. So these are 3 separate restaurants?
There's three. We have 3 restaurant premises on file.
Okay.
So they've each been assigned their own rents by the model based on their leasable area.
Right. And so the third one is you've got it at 16,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then your comps on page 12. You don't really have anything of that size comparative wise.
Okay, let me take a look.
I think the biggest one you have is on Graham at 5,500.
Yeah, that's true.
So you couldn't find anything of that size?
No, I could not.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, just as disclosure, I guess my wife used to work in that building in the office of the Director of Property Planning and Development. So I'm somewhat familiar with this building. The 3 restaurants, one is a small breakfast type place, breakfast coffee break type place on the main floor. Then there's a larger one on the second floor. It's usually used by the office staff for lunches and whatnot. And then of course you got the large revolving restaurant on top. Um, uh, so I don't know if anything arises from that, but those are what the restaurants are, and there's a number of shops uh, there as well. Okay, so other than that, I have no questions. So Mr. DuPont, you can proceed.
Can I redirect from that?
Sure, go ahead if there's something arising from that. Yeah.
Matt, the revolving restaurant, would you agree it has been vacant since at least 2021?
You're on mute, Matt.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fact. Yeah.
So would you agree we should allow a higher than normal vacancy for the restaurant section then?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, the reference date's what, April 1st, 2023. I think opening a restaurant during a pandemic probably wouldn't be the most attractive thing on a short-term basis. So, yes, it has been empty subsequently, but I think part of that might have been influenced by the generational pandemic we were experiencing.
Okay, that's all questions.
Okay, now Henry, Mr. DuPont, you can begin your presentation.
Okay, so you'll see first page, success 122 million, and we're asking for 120 million. So we're asking for 20 million off, no, 2 million off. And the big portions, the residential, and we don't dispute that, so that we're disputing the commercial. They have something like 22 million, and we're asking for 19 million. So we can maybe skip to the analysis for a commercial. It's on page 11. So on page 11, I take the expenses from the commercial, from the various items, and then I show them that's taxes, gas, electricity, and I show what I stabilize at and what they are per square foot on each one of them. So it's 922 is the total expenses. And for parkade, we're going to use 40% expense ratio. So we're going to remove 260,060 for the parkade expense. That's 101 per square foot. So therefore, the recoverable expenses for the building or the commercial portion is $8.21. And for the city of Winnipeg, it says no taxes, and the taxes are $1.14. So the expenses applicable to city of Winnipeg leases are $7.08, and applicable to the other leases are $8.21, and that's from the stabilizing the revenue and expense. Page 12, we have a summary of all the income stream. So the we show the retail office 60E, which is the city. You can see that I have that in green. The value we come with up with is 6,664,000, and success 4,007,000. So we're asking for an increase on the city's own office space, and then the other four income streams are shown there. That and we show the vacancies that we use, and then we add all of it up together as 13 million. The CC60, excluding the 60E from the city, is 13,662,000. Rounded 663, and then the SSS 17,656. So we're asking basically 4 million reduction in the CC60, and almost 2 million increase in the 60E. The 60E doesn't really matter because they're exempt in the end, but the board should just give a value that it believes applies to that. So our decrease we're asking for is 4 million in the commercial. And so the next page is the income stream for the retail. It shows there that the Instant Tailor, which is a ABM, and is a tenant for 2,960 square feet. So I guess to get familiar with this, we if you go the third last column, we have the face rent, which the number company is 1694, and the unrecovered expense 821. So that how we arrive at a net rent of 873. Then there's 3 vacant spaces. Then another small space comes to 779, and then another vacant space. We give 850 square foot for the vacant space. So it shows the square footage, and we allow 50% vacancy. And on the line shows vacancy. The actual vacancy is 1909 square feet, or 34%. So therefore, our vacancy allowance of 15% is very reasonable. We allow a shortfall of 821 per square foot, Other 3% is the same as the assessor. Cap rate 6.9 is the same as the assessment department. So if you look at the bottom in red, these are the assessments that the city has for the various income approaches. And then for the retail, it's the second last line. They have 68, 61 square feet and 941. They have only 5% vacancy. Shortfall is 7. We're using slightly more because we're 821. They're a 6.9% cap rate, so we don't dispute that. So their value is 827 and ours is 473. Partly because we have slightly lower rent, less square footage, and 15% vacancy. The assessor square footage tends to be different than what the rent rolls are, etc. Because I guess it's how you categorize each of the tenants. So we've categorized these particular tenants. So there's a difference in square footage there, 1,200 square feet. The next income approach, that's the office. So then you'll see that there's different color coding we have there. So in the gray bluish, we have these are the rents that owner occupied or vacant. And red is we have rents that are low, so that the German Canadian Congress has a gross rent of $6. So therefore, by the time you remove the expenses of 821 would be negative rent. So those are low or non-performing rents. The next one in red is high risers, charitable donation, and their rent is 0, so that we give it a $6 rent. United Firefighters is the same thing. They have 822 gross rent, and the expenses are 821, so it give them a 1 cent negative rent. So we give it 804 rent. And the big one is the Center Morning Athletic Club, 12,000 square feet. They pay no rent. And over the years, they were paying rent at the beginning, and then the rents went down, and they kept it at 0 rent. It's not making any money, but it's a good amenity for the rest of the building. For the commercial tenants, they can go there on their time off at lunch, or a lot of the tenants. So they keep it there as an amenity. So it makes sense for the owner to have 0 rent because it becomes an amenity, makes the rest of the building more attractive. Even though it's 0 and it is an amenity, we give it $6 rent. So a lot of the rents are the face rent less the unrecovered expenses, and that's what we calculate. You'll see some 788, 779, and 554, 379. There's also rent, which are used as storage. So page 15. So we have a subtotal. And right beside the vacancy, on the right side of the vacancy, we show the vacant area, 27,826 square feet. That's 19%. No or low rent, 15,355 square feet. Part of that's the athletic club, which is 12,000 square feet. That's 11%. Lower finish, there was color coded, those would be the storage, is 2%. So total underperforming vacant and no or low rent, lower finish is 32%. So almost a third of the space there is underperforming. We allow 15% for vacancy allowance. And so even though those have negative rents, some of the tenants have negative rents, we still use a $6 rent on those. So our average rent that we have there is 144,813 square feet, 572 per square foot. With the vacancy of 15%, we have the 821 is our shortfall. And we agree with the 3% non-recoverable for the assessor that the city has, and we agree with the cap rate 7%. And red at the bottom of the page is what the city has. So they have 140,368 square feet, and we have 4,000 square feet more than the city. There again, it's likely due to some of the categorization that we do. So we have slightly less on the retail and more on the office. They have rents of 684. We have 572. So we're both relatively low in relation to the market. The assessor has 12% vacancy. And we have 15, and we show why, because they have 32% of their performing, and we have the same cap rate. So the assessor's value is 8,333,000, and ours is 7,209,000. Then now we can go to the next one. This the 60E, the exempt. So the leases that the city has, 1450 per square foot, and their expenses are less because they pay no taxes, 708. So that comes to some 42 for their space, most of them. And there's a few which are lower. The gross were 550 in one and 1050 the other. So you come to 342, and that's what we put in there. So then we use 12% vacancy, same as the assessor. We have some 36 is the rent. 821 is a shortfall. I guess if it became vacant, the landlord would have to pay taxes on it. So that's why we have the shortfall 821. And so the assessment department has 4,000,007. We're at 6,664,000. Assessment department is 627 rent in red. You'll see that. So that for some reason they have lower rent for the 60E than the OFB. OFB have 684. Their shortfall is quite high also. It's $14. And we did not use that high shortfall. The actual Class B and Class A offices will have the high office expenses like that. But this property is operating on much lower expense. So we use those lower expenses of 821 per square foot versus the city showing at 14. Because if we had 14 expenses, there'd be virtually no value for those two office sections here. So the next income approach, page 18. And that's the restaurants. You can see there's the one Kelly's Cafe, 1,000 square feet, and the other one 2158. And the actual rents that they have is $12 gross and $975 gross. And after you remove the 21 expense, the contract rent is shown in green, $379, $154. We allow $5 a square foot. The assessor, if you look at the bottom in red, they allowing $655 per square foot for the rent. We're allowing $5. So the 16,373 square feet, that's the Prairie 360, that's vacant. And then red on the notes is it was Prairie 360 on the 2020 rent roll. So it showed up on the 2020 rent roll, and it did not show up on the 2021 rent roll. In the past, when we were doing appeals on this, we were showing that Prairie 360 was having a problem with the rent and the income, and the owner had reduced their rents over time, and they had put them on percentage rent, I believe. And then when the pandemic came, they could not operate anymore, and they moved out. But as you know, the pandemic was over by the end of 2021, and this was not rented up after that. So most of the restaurants in Winnipeg do not have the high vacancy. They've all recovered, and this one is vacant, and nobody's stepping up to take over the place because they did have problems before the pandemic. So we allow 25% vacancy. And then and highlighted, we showed the actual vacancy is 84%. So I believe our vacancy is quite reasonable. I believe the assessor maximum vacancy they allow is 35%. When it's chronic. So this one is not quite chronic because it's only since the end of 2020. But nevertheless, 25% is quite reasonable that what we're allowing. And we agree with the assessor's cap rate at 3% non-recoverable expense. The city is allowing shortfall of $9. We're allowing only $821. So we're allowing less there. So we come to a value of $408,000 versus the assessment $1,044,000. So I believe we can move now to the next one. So now the parking from the questionnaires, which the assessor showed, and I can show you again, 650. We've allowed 40% expenses from that, and 260, and we had taken that off when we calculated the expenses for the rest of the office of the commercial. That comes to a net of 390,000. I could do the math here. The 390 net divided by 235 stalls, I believe. That's a rate of $138 per stall per month, which I believe is quite reasonable. And so we, using the same cap rate as the assessor, 7%. And then they show in red, it shows that what the assessor is using. They're using 521,700 as the net, and the 7% vacancy. So that's our total value, and we can go to the questionnaire so that our page 22. So this, they have commercial statement. They show it as 81 park, and the one they combine everything is just under 55, Gary. So they have the commercial. So here starts with the residential rent as residential parking. So there's no rent basically. And shows the commercial rent, total rent and gross at 3,092,000. The total vacancy they showed, I have highlighted that as 815. They show 26% vacancy. So the overall commercial has this high amount of vacancy, 26%. So the vacancy allowance that we've allowed on each individual income approach is quite reasonable in relation to that 26%. The recoveries is highlighted in yellow, so they have very little recoveries. Then the commercial parking reviews, we have that highlighted, and they have commercial parking, hospitality, and casual also. So that includes the casual parking they receive in that building, and that's the income 650,151. And the rest of the expenses in that is what we use to come up with our expense ratio of $8.21 per square foot. And that would be my report.
Okay, questions, Mr. Braucus?
I do not have any questions.
Okay. Questions, Ms. Linklater?
Just one question. Good afternoon, Mr. DuPont.
Well,
Do you know, is your client actively trying to rent this restaurant space? And if so, do you know for how long?
I didn't find out the exact date of vacancy, if that's what you're asking. No, I'm sure they're trying to rent the restaurant.
Okay. Do you know if they would be offering incentives to people in terms of the rent?
I don't know exactly, but in the past appeals, when they were still there, there was quite a few incentives that they had done and discounts, and they had done everything to keep the restaurant there. So I can go to the past reports if you want, but
That's all right. Okay, I thank you. That is all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, now with respect to the revolving restaurant, haven't there been a number, or at least two, that have tried to make a go in that spot? It was the what they call it, the Royal Crown for a while or something like that. Were there any others in there?
I didn't check into that. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So you don't know if they've had difficulty keeping clients in that spot. It's a unique spot in Winnipeg, would you not say?
Oh, yes, it is, and it's a nice thing to have for Winnipeg. Uh, but by same token, that they've had difficulty over the years and difficulty keeping tenants there. I guess they put them on a tryout basis, and um, yeah, I have the 2023 report in front of me, and the rent was down to 58 cents per square foot for the last assessment cycle. They had it down to 553 gross rent. Um, so they had done a whole bunch of concessions in the past also.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Brackus, do you wish a summation?
I do not, thank you.
Mr. DuPont?
No summation.
Okay. So thank you for that. That wasn't as long as I thought it might be. We'll move just down the street to 90 Gary Street.
Okay, thank you very much. File 24-2728, roll number 12092446400 90 Gary Street. So we've got, again, 3 lines of classification, 19,757,000 total. Residential portion is 17,411,000. The modeled valuation for the taxable commercial is 1,855,000, and the institutional school tax section has a valuation of 491. I'm actually going to make a recommendation on the commercial stuff, just through reviewing the applicant's workup and also the mailer that we received. I think we're quite a bit too high on the commercial. So I'm not going to touch the residential portion of 17,411, but I will actually go to what the applicant is requesting for the commercial on it. So for the 40S, school tax exempt, we'll go 339,000. And we'll go with for the taxable 1,053,000. So basically what that is based on the fact that when you look at what they're actually getting compared to what the model is saying they're capable getting on an effective gross income basis, the model is way too high. So in my eyes, that the applicant's presentation for those two income streams is for this property is more reasonable. So I'll just stop there for what the applicant has to say.
Okay, Mr. Dupont, with respect, I guess, to the exempt as well as the retail, how do you feel about those two numbers?
Yes, I accept those.
Okay, so all that's in, well, all, it's the majority of it, is the 20T then.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Brack is on the 20T then.
Okay, thank you. So 18 stories, 1986, 113 suites, 142 outdoor parking spots, construction class C masonry bearing walls. Pardon me, page 2. Good with handing in mailers, no recent sales history. Page 3, we've got the apartment workup. So we've got 36 one bedroom, 77 two bedrooms, 113 total units. Average monthly rent as per the model, 1,440.66 with a 4.3 vacancy, 49.71 expense ratio on a 5.4 cap. That gets us to the estimated market value of 17,411,000. So if we go to the next page, actually the next page it shows like the retail breakdown, which I've foregone once I saw the applicant's evidence by recommendation. So on page 5, we just got our rent comparables here in the local downtown area. So some of them are newer, no doubt, like 300 is Assiniboine is a newer property. 160 Smith actually has had some updates to it. And then we've got 233 Kennedy and 92 Princess. So we're at 1,440.66, which falls within the range on the lower end. The comps are a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. We've got our cap rate evidence on page 7. You've seen this before. It's a sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period, not meant to be site specific or anything like that. Did 3 years of stabilization. Unless something's changed, there's no cap rate dispute on this, so I won't burn too much time on it. Page 8 shows the overall chart for the different property types in the 20th to 80th for apartments. Then the municipal excerpts on page 9. Page 10 just shows some recent permits that were taken out. They did some structural alterations and waterproofing of the parkade in 2021. Some electrical and mechanical to the tune of 1.3 million, just about 1.2, 1.3. They did some more work at the same time, $70,000. You could read the description. Then we got some pictures of the units. So I think it looks like they're in good condition, well kept. They don't look I mean, I wouldn't call them luxury, but I would say they're upkept very well in a desirable area. Air conditioning, balcony, dishwasher, got some indoor parking. So yeah, and then on page 16, it shows the income and expense statement that we received. And so you can see here how like the commercial rent they're reporting differs substantially from what the model was predicting. And then I looked at the applicant's workup, and I thought his conclusions were actually more reasonable. So I went that direction. One thing you'll notice here is for the repairs and maintenance, It looks like it's over like 4,000 a unit. So, like even though like the residential rent that they're reporting, the potential residential rent they're reporting is $100,000 less than what the model's cranking out. Their expenses are so high. I'm not sure if they're in the process of renovations or not. So for that income stream, I didn't touch it for that reason because it was unclear and I didn't have a breakdown or anything. So circling back for the residential, 17,411,000, and then my recommendation I made for the commercial stuff at the onset of my presentation as well. 1,053,000 for the CC60, and for the CC40S, 339,000. That's my evidence. Thank you.
Okay, do you have a final overall total then?
Oh, I could do that. 1 second. So the final overall total would be that would be 18,803,000.
Okay, thank you. So questions, Mr. Dupont?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, questions?
No questions, thanks.
Okay, Ms. Linklater.
I also have no questions. Thank you.
All right, and I have no questions. So, Mr. Dupont, your presentation then, and please focus on the apartment.
Okay. Jump to page 13. We calculated the 2022 taxes there. So we get the 161,979. And page 14, that's the income approach. Now the repair maintenance, and I forgot to include our analysis in the repair maintenance. So line 27 on page 14, we stabilized at 2,057 per suite. And I can tell you verbally what they had. So that flooring replacement, it's relatively high each and every year. And we stabilize at the maximum 500 per suite. Appliance replacement is also relatively high. We stabilize at that max 225. We stabilize at 87% of the flooring costs and 89% of the appliance, so they're slightly higher than the max. Painting, we also stabilize at 79% of the actual to bring it to a max of 225, and that's every year, the same thing. So it's not as if they're doing it just in 1 year, they're doing it each and every year. That's the management style that they have. And same as counters and cupboards, we went 94% of actual, excluding 2020. But I believe the big difference that we have is line 5, vacancy. We stabilize at 10.3%. The assessor is 4.3. So if you apply 4.3% to my income approach, then there would be no case. Our case would disappear. So I think the other issues don't matter that much. Just you should concentrate on the vacancy. The 2018 to 2020, you can see the discounts that they have each and every year. And then line 4, you see the vacancy. 9%, 12.4, 15.4, then 10.3 by 2022. The discounts for 2022 is not shown the change, the type of financial statements they give. And there they just show the rent, the net rent after discount. So we don't know what it was. But line 3, it was 1,835,000 in 2020. It's 1,850,000 in 2022. It's probably similar discounts. And the vacancy went down slightly. So we stabilized at the 10.2% vacancy and the 3-year average of 12.8. So we're in line with the 3-year average, and it reflects the actual. So that the rent they're asking is causing the market to push back and they have to give discounts. So if they wanted a normal vacancy, they have to reduce their rents. And so that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Brockus?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arnell.
Just clarification on the vacancy you used, so you used 10.3?
Yes, the
The right
actual
time
from
reading this.
2022. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I
Oh,
had.
okay, Ms. Linklater.
My question has been asked and answered. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I have no questions, so thank you very much. And now I've just got to open the next file. We'll do one more property and then have a short break.
Great.
So the next property is 300 Assiniboine.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, file 29, or sorry, file 24-2924. Roll number 12097774700 300 Assiniboine Avenue. What do we got here? Sorry. We have two lines of assessed value. The original assessment by the model was 727 for the 60T taxable, and then we have 62,244 by the model for the 20T taxable. I actually have a recommendation on this one, so
Okay.
just let me pull it up quick right here just to make sure I'm doing this correctly. Let's see this. Okay. One moment. Okay, so I have for the residential, I'm gonna make a recommendation of 58 million 500 rounded on it.
Based on,
Okay, so that's based on an EGI of 4,979,212,
okay,
expenses of 2,054,198,
okay,
and then that's an NOI of 2,925,000.
okay.
And then you cap that at 5%.
5% cap?
Yeah, 5 cap. So it's a bit of a slight bump on that one.
Okay, and is the retail the same then?
Yes, let me check here. I don't think I made any changes on the retail. No, I did not make any changes on the retail. So I'll just
Okay.
pause there.
Okay, let me just note that
Oh, sorry. Oh, no, sorry. I do apologize. No, we do have an agreement on the retail of 671,000. I apologize.
71.
Yeah, which is actually the applicant's figure. We discussed this ahead of time. I just missed that in my email here, so I'm not reneging on anything.
Okay. All right. All right, it's fine. Mr. Dupont, how do you feel about the uh what was the new number for the
Oh, the total figure?
no for well yeah, but the for the apartment, what was the total number
Oh,
again?
yeah, 58,500. Oh, sorry, 58
Oh,
million 500,000.
okay. Yeah, I
That's
wrote
right.
that down already. Okay.
Been a very long day here today for me, so
Yeah, yeah.
apologize for that.
I think everybody's getting a little
Yeah.
All right, so Mr. Dupont, how do you feel about the 58,500,000 for the apartment portion?
Well, I won't tell you what my emotions are, but I do accept it.
Okay. All right, so you accept that. Okay. Yep. All right. Mr. Arnell, do you have any questions on this?
No, no questions at all. Thank you.
All right, and Ms. Linklater, any questions?
I would just like a final number from Mr. Barakas.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
sorry, yeah.
State it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem. Okay. There you go. So the total, should I put that in right here? That would be 59,171,000.
All right, I thank you for that.
Okay, so thank you for that one. Now, got to open up the next files.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, before we move on, can
Oh,
we
yes, we're
take
going to have a
short
break.
break?
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
And sorry, I just wanted to ask also, is Mr. Dupont in agreement with the 671?
Yes, I am.
You are. Okay.
I'm agreement residential and commercial, which I believe comes to 59,171,000.
Yep.
So I agree to that.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I did promise a break, so we'll take a break till 2:15, I guess. It gives us a 13 minutes break. Okay, welcome back. We'll move to 375 Assiniboine, and this is strictly a cap rate issue. So if you can concentrate on that, I would appreciate it. So Mr. Brackus, you can begin.
Thank you very much. File 24-2759, roll number 12092600000, 375 Assiniboine Avenue. It's a Manitoba housing property. There's two lines of assessment. There's tax exempt not-for-profit daycare in there. That's the 364,000. That's not under dispute, And then we have the residential component 20T grantable for 9,061,000 total value. 9,425,000, 17 stories, 1977, 125 suites, 31 outdoor parking spots. No recommendation on this property. Page 2, request for income information. No problem there. We got our income value summary here on page 3 of the 125 total units. 90 of them are bachelors, so it's actually mostly bachelors, and then it has 35 two-bedroom units. No one-bedroom units, so that's kind of different. Then we've got our 4.3% vacancy and our modeled parameters here. Our average monthly rent is only $756.05 with a 5.5 cap rate. 72,488 a unit. Then we got our, on page 5, we have our comparables. So I was seeking out comparables that had bachelors. When you look at the comparables, none of them have as high of an overall percentage of total units encompassed by the bachelors as the subject property does. But when you look at the rents, their average monthly rents are higher as well, and they have one bedrooms. Ours doesn't have one bedrooms, it has 35 two-bedroom units. So carrying on 6 and 7, I did a for CMHC review using the CMHC tables for the Centennial downtown area. And what was calculated on page 7 shows that we're only 76%. So rents aren't really in dispute though, so. We got our cap rate evidence on page 9. So again, these are some sales. I pulled 3-year stabilizations for, they weren't renovated afterwards, they're arm's length. So, we're at 5.5 and, only 72,000 a unit. So it seems pretty reasonable. We got pictures on page 12 and onwards. It does look like they have had some refreshing. Now, I don't know if this is all the units. Sometimes I know with housing, what they do is they can only refresh when the unit becomes vacant. So I don't know whether this is indicative of all the units or this is just one that's been recently done and advertised. So looks good, nothing fancy. It's Manitoba housing, right? Then on page 14, just a description from the website in terms of wheelchair accessible suites and on-site shared tenant care services, housekeeping, meal prep. So I mean, we're not valuing it as a not-for-profit, but that's just how it's being operated by housing. So on page 16, I think there was some kind of interior alterations in 2013 of 47,000. I really wouldn't consider that relevant. Some relocation of walls on page 17 for 35,000. Again, that's in 2017. That's not something I would really assign a heck of a lot of value to. But on page 18, so they did $5.3 million worth of work. Interior work that includes new bulkheads, and rated shafts, new finishes, and millwork. Exterior work includes removing precast, balcony guards, window and door replacement on the 2 to 17 of the floors and new cladding, mechanical, electrical. So it does look like they actually did do a bunch of work based on the price tag on the permit of $5.3 million.
Yeah, I will point out my usual warning here that the board puts little weight on permits. We're not using the cost approach here.
Yep, for sure. Just when I include that stuff, it's like to give the panel like an idea of what the interior condition would be like in lieu of us all going down there and inspecting it.
Yeah, we'll just take it as they've been maintained.
Yep. Okay, so that's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Dupont?
First page. So you show 31 parking
Yep.
out of 125 suites. So you would agree that's quite low?
Based on the overall suite count, yeah.
You don't show anywhere as whether it has air conditioning or not. Would you agree it has no air conditioning?
I haven't inspected it, so I can't confirm either way.
You have photos there, so was it inspected by somebody at the city?
I think this is from just the website or a website. But I didn't inspect it, so I personally can't comment on it.
Okay, that's all questions.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, any questions?
Just one. So in your opinion, do most Manitoba housings have air conditioning or not?
It varies.
It's
From
not a
what I've
common
seen,
rule.
the majority of them, I believe, do not.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Ms. Linklater?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. So, Mr. Baracus, I think you indicated that this brief was model driven, correct?
Yes,
And you did not make any changes?
I did not.
Okay. On page 3, you indicate that there's 125 units, which 90 of those are bachelor. Would you agree that bachelor are not the norm, that amount?
Yeah, I mean, like typically what you see is you see mostly 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Correct.
And I mean, if you're gonna have a building with more bachelor suites than others, I would think that this would be the area to do it, given its access to public transportation, general downtown amenities.
Okay, but overall for apartment buildings, bachelors are certainly less desirable.
Well, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on who you are and where you're living. If you're like thinking about like a new building, you know, like McPhillips in the perimeter, of course, yeah. I would say that the bachelors and maybe ones, it wouldn't be such a big deal. And like just bouncing off that to the parking, sometimes the people living downtown, they're taking the bus, you know, they're riding their bike. They don't need as much parking, but still 31 parking stalls for 125 units is low. But I think if you're gonna have more bachelors than this area, the Osborne Village area would be the area you'd be more likely to get away with it, so to speak.
Okay, well then in regards to your page 5 of your comparables, your ratio of bachelor to the number of units is much lower than your subject property.
Yeah, and yet the rents are much higher. And when you look at the CMHC
Okay,
workup, when that's weighted by subject unit type, we're only 76%. And when you consider how much money they spent in the photograph we have on the inside, looks like it's in good condition. Or at least they spent enough money for it to be in pretty well-maintained condition. And rents aren't something that we're really in dispute here, so.
true. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all my questions.
Okay, so focusing on cap rate, then you're um, really somewhat slightly above the 80th percentile then, so it might be the 85th or something like that percentile.
I guess, yeah.
So it's okay, so it's by your scales, it's a relatively high cap rate then.
I mean, like on a per unit basis, it's like 70,000 per unit for a building that had, you know, 5 point something million work done to it. Like I look at over the overall assessment that it cranks out, and considering we're 25% below market rents, I think the overall valuation is not one that I would make a change to.
All right, thank you. So Mr. Dupont, you can begin.
Just like to maybe perhaps give verbal rebuttal to his report, specifically his building permit. It basically says it's mainly for structural work, new bulkheads, precast balcony rails, window and door replacement, and new cladding, mechanical, electrical work. So they just making up for maybe the poor condition, poor materials they had to start with. So it was mainly structural work. So our briefs, page 2, you'll see the photo. If you look on top there, you'll see now and then there's a little black box in the windows. Those are when tenants put in their own window air conditioning. So it shows that the building itself does not provide window air conditioning, which is quite normal. So most of MHRC are pretty much the same. There would be only a few little spots that have window air conditioning, and that's be the owners putting that in, the tenants, sorry, putting that in. So we can go to our income approaches, page 12. Here we talk about the cap rates for social housing. So they have basic finishes without landlord air conditioning and low income tenancy, and we quote a couple orders where the board and the appraisal journals have stated that low investment grade apartments warrant a higher yield. The first quote there, and overall rate than conventional apartment properties. And then the next page, page 12, 13, we also quote valuation market studies of affordable housing. Market derived cap rates for income restricted property begins with analysis of unrestricted property. And they should be adjusted for risk factors an investor would consider in developing a cap rate study. Now, it is low income tenancies, so therefore the quality of tenants is not as high. The repair maintenance tend to be higher also over time. So page 15, we have the cap rate. So built 1977. So our cap rate from our cap rate study is 5.5 to 6.25. So our base is 5.5. Then we see the comments specifically to this property. This masonry reconstruction, which is a better construction. Building amenities is social housing, no amenities, no air conditioning. That's 44 years old. Condition we consider inferior. The suite mix 72% bachelor, that's inferior. Parking is only 28%, that's inferior. So therefore, you're not buying a good income stream. It's a riskier income stream. You can't attract people with a higher tenancy value because of lack of parking and large amount of bachelor suites. So those physical factors would indicate a higher cap rate to start with. And then you have the social housing by itself indicates a higher cap rate. So if you have the physical features as well, the fact that social housing, a 0.5% premium, that's quite reasonable. So we have a 6% cap rate. And then the next page, page 16, we apply the 6% cap rate to the assessor's net income. We get a value of 8 million T06. Commercial or the 40E exempt, we don't dispute. The appendix, we have some more on the cap rates for affordable housing, and we have the orders from the municipal board. Page 21, we highlight some of the parts of these orders, and the city agent refers to subject property as being low-grade residential investment or originally construction as budget housing. And then the page 22, they refer to appraisal journal 1996, no investment grade apartments warrant a higher yield. And then page 23, the board says with respect to cap rates, the board finds that the two rates determined by the assessment department for the mass assessment of multifamily may not recognize all factors for all properties in their jurisdiction, so they allow for a higher cap rate. We have another decision to start page 24, and we have page 25 also, where we highlight parts of the cap rate discussion. And then page 27, the board finds that the cap rate does not adequately reflect the fact subject is more high risk investment. So I believe it's been established for a very long time. Appraisal journals, appraisal articles, authorities, and the municipal board that a cap rate premium should apply for social housing. And this particular case, we have also two other factors, physical factors, low parking and high amount of bachelors, which would justify a cap rate of 6% and a 0.5% premium. Sorry, thank you very much. My report.
Okay, questions, Mr. Brockus?
Yeah, just a couple. Are you valuing this as a social housing property or as a for-profit? What a for-profit purchaser would purchase this on?
For profit, we're using market rents, not the actual rents.
Okay. So
But it's
um,
occupied by social housing, so therefore that type of property is higher risk.
would a for-profit purchaser receive subsidies from the government?
No, we're not allowing for that NARCM approach.
So would the tenants be vacated then, given that they couldn't afford the rent without subsidy?
Yeah, if it were converted to for profit, yeah, the tenants will likely have to vacate.
Okay. So then its current iteration, its current non-highest and best use iteration as a social housing property really wouldn't kind of play into the cap rate consideration, wouldn't it?
Yes, it's a higher risk. The municipal board and the appraisal authorities see a higher, it's higher risk and a higher cap rate. It warrants a higher risk for social housing.
On,
You cannot just assume that it will disappear social housing.
on page 15, you said the condition is inferior. Have you inspected the property?
No,
Um, were you aware of the $5 million plus permit for also not only structural but like the millwork, mechanical and electrical as well? Were you aware of that when you made the table on page 15?
yes, it was 2017. The assessment department gives these permits for every hearing or in every appeal we do. But then that's mainly for structural, mechanical, electrical. It does mention some millwork, etc., but it doesn't appear to be a suite. And since it's social housing, they do not renovate to the same degree as they would for-profit property. Since it's subsidized, they don't make it luxury apartment or as good quality as the for-profit.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Ms. Linklater?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arnell.
No questions, thanks.
Okay, so you're starting with a base cap rate of 5.5%.
Yes.
Is that correct? And you're adding 0.5% for social housing.
Yes. I believe their assessment base is 5.4. We're close anyways, on the base.
Yeah, their 80th percentile is 5.45.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically there's no disagreement on the base cap rate, and it's solely on the adjustment for the fact that social housing, high bachelors and low parking. And no AC, sorry, I should also mention that, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for that. So we shall move to the next property, 35 Hargrave. Let me open those files first. Sorry, not 35, 33 Hargrave. I'm next door. So, Mr. Baracus, on 33 Hargrave.
Okay, yeah, one moment, just let me get this open here. Okay, file 24-3325, roll number 12092551500, 33 Hargrave Street. We've got 35,343,000. Classifications, we got two. We got 34,070,000 for the residential two, and we've got 1,273,000 for the commercial. That's a 1978. We've got an effective year built on it of 1998. 23 stories, 252 suites, 194 indoor parking, 8 outdoor parking spots. No problem with handing the mailers in. We've got our workup on page 3 here. It's an even split between 1 and 2 bedroom units at 126 apiece, with the average monthly rent of 1,210 and 96 cents. We've got the parameters in front of us right here. We got 5 1/4 cap for the apartment, and then we've got our retail and office that have 6.1 and 7% respectively. Page 4 shows the rent assignments. We've got for the office and retail as well broken down. Rent comparables are found on page 4. Mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. We have the comparables 1, 2, and 3 also have bachelor units in the mix there. 160 Smith does not. That one has a higher count of one bedroom units, but that one is also a bit more fixed up in terms of its effective year built. We're at 1,210, so we fall within the range as per the model. The comparable leases are found on page 6. They range from $13.50 to $17. Going back to page 4, subject property and market income, we're predominantly within that range as well. The cap rates charts on page 7 and 8. Municipal excerpts on page 9. Page 10, there was a permit for 1.4 million. Some curtain wall balcony enclosures in 2005 and replacing windows for 1.4. So that was a while ago. That was about 20 years before the physical reference date. And in 2006, it looks like they did some more reconfiguring of suite layouts, some millwork, replacements and plumbing. But again, that was pretty much 20 years ago. On page 12, you can see the general location where it's located downtown. We're still in that Broadway Cinnabon area. It's another one of these towers. You can see the outside of the building here on page 13. Looks pretty good. See the commercial on the main floor. And some pictures from the website in regards to the units. As per what they're showing, look pretty good. In terms of millwork and finish, looks attractive to me. And then we have on page 16 and 17, we have the income and expense mailer. This one with the model on this one, that's my evidence. Thank you.
Hey, questions, Mr. DuPont?
Did you investigate the vacancy, actual vacancy and subject?
I did not.
And their square footage, what you use is a lot different from the rent rolls. Have you investigated that also?
Are you talking the commercial or the?
Yes, commercial.
No, unfortunately, I barely got this one in on time and haven't really looked at it since, unfortunately.
No, and the apartment itself also is operating at a high vacancy. So have you looked at the vacancy, the actual operating vacancy, to see if you should adjust it?
No, I didn't make any adjustments to the vacancy, or I didn't do like a historical look back in time to see if it's something that's chronic, or it's just a one-time thing. So I don't have that information within the contents of my brief.
It's all questions I have.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, questions?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Linklater?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I have no questions, so Mr. Dupont, you can proceed. Are you muted, Mr. Dupont?
No, and I'm just going through my files. You can hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Perhaps you should just go through the appendix. Starting on page 21. So the first page there shows the rent rolls on top, show the square footages of these things. So that this is where we get our information from.
What page is that again?
21, I said? Yeah, 21.
21. Hey. Fine print.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then right below that is a rent roll, which is 2021, and it shows the hard rate foods, Suite 100, 2,000 square feet, Good Hair, 508 square feet. Page net is 0, and fast net communication 0 square footage. And they have some rent there, which would be, I guess, for the rooftop. Then 101, 102, 108 are shown as vacant. It shows the square footage that it has there. I believe the assessor has 101, 102 as 4270 square feet. So it's different. So then it shows that the total square footage is occupied to 508 square feet, vacant 3610 square feet. So they had total to have 6118 for 2021. And the small print up there, harder to read, but it's would be similar. And so this is where we get our information. Then we have the 2020 rent roll, which also shows these, and then we have the 2023, the revenue and expense. So they have residential rent at 3,744,000, vacancy 264, less non-development, another 140,000, free rent 332,000, rebates, etc. 845,000 rebates. So that that's information we've been put into our income stream. So if you go to our first page, you'll see that the assessment is 34 million for residential. We're asking for 21 million. It's a very large cut on the residential. The commercial, we're asking for a reduction from 1,273,000 to 829,000. We have some photos. Then we can skip that to the maps. You can see where the property is.
What page is that?
Page 7 is the overhead photo, and the
Okay.
map, page 8. And then we can go to the multiple residential valuation starts on page 12. First, we calculate the taxes because the financial statements mixes the residential and commercial taxes. And we do the 2022 taxes after the rebate, after the provincial rebate. So we do the assessment times the mill rate, which is after the rebate. So that comes 379,709. That's what we'll plug in into our income approach. And the next line, cap rate, which is the assessor has 4.75. That's typo. Well, we forgot to change that, so you should not look at that. Now the subject is built 1978, and the assessor has an effective age 1998. So 1998 would be 5.25. For our site specific, we're saying due to crime and poverty, city core is less desirable than the suburbs. There's no parking on site. It's all on a separate lot. Persistent vacancy indicates higher risk. So we give it a cap rate 5.5. So then the next page is the spreadsheet with the income approach. So you'll see the 3 years. So it shows the potential gross rental, line 1, the discounts. So the rents pretty much did not change in 2022 over 2021, but the discounts increased dramatically. So you can see from 2020 to 2022, rents are virtually the same, but discounts are increasing tremendously. Vacancy, it was 597 in 2020, is down to 364, partly due to the fact that they reduced the rents by way of discounts. So the vacancy was 17.3% 2020, 19% 2021, 10.7. The average is 15.7. So we put it at 10.7. So that the market is pushing hard back on what the rents are giving. That's the vacancy that is getting based on those rents. And you can see the bad debt is quite high also, 82,000, 70,000, 49. So that it speaks to the low quality of the tenants. Or perhaps they just don't like the rents, which comes to $1,126. So this is how it's operating, so that we're using the bad debt at the actual 2022, which is less than a 3-year average. Then we add the laundry at the 2022 and the parking at 2022. So line 13, we have the 3198 as the effective gross income, which is about 300,000 lower than the assessor at 3504. So based on the actual operation, we have slightly less. Expenses, you can look at line 32. We're stabilizing at 62.9%. The assessor is stabilizing at 49, based on their model. It's not done on a site specific. So insurance, we're going with the actual insurance management fee 5%, and actual office and sundry, and advertising, we're going the 3-year average, which is less than the actually high 2022. We use hydro, water, and gas actual in 2022. Repair maintenance, we stabilized at 1514, and I forgot to give you the or stabilize the repair maintenance, and I can give you some verbal on that. If you look at line 27, the repair maintenance 409, 681, 407, we stabilize at 381, so we're stabilizing lower than the actual. So on 2021, they had contract services 272,000 compared to previous years 119 and 81. They put a whole bunch of stuff in contract services, so that's what they contract out. So we're not exactly sure what that is, but we disallowed 2021 and 2022 when we stabilized. Then HVAC mechanical was high, and 2018 they had 999,000. So they spent almost $1 million, and 2018 on the HVAC and mechanical, they spent 283,000 in 2019 and 237,000 in 2021, 0 for 2022. So we stabilize at the low 2020 year. Then the remaining repair maintenance, we stabilize at the 5-year average, and same as the grounds, it's a 5-year average. They have a section called turnover, which is only 168 per suite. We stabilize at that, and turnover would be normally for flooring and new appliances that you would give upon turnover. And the maximum for that we have is 500, and 225, which would be 725. They're only 168, so they're spending less on turnover or the upgrades of the suites than normal. So a lot of the high repair and maintenance was due to the HVAC, mechanical, and contract services. Nevertheless, we stabilized at a relatively normal repair maintenance of 1514 per suite, relatively low. So our expenses is 2,000,011, back to page 13. So our net income is 1,186,000, which is much less than the assessor 1,788. And so the cap rate we employ is 5.5 versus the assessor 5.25. And that's where we get the value line 35 on page 13, 21,577 versus the assessor 34. The next page is the commercial. So the two parts. So we add the two parts, the office and the retail. We'll do the individual ones afterwards. And then we have the two added together. We have a value of 829, the assessor 1273. As we have a lower value for office as well as the retail, and then that will show the next page. To rotate. So that that's the office section. And it's 3,000 square feet, and it's vacant since December 31st, 2014, at least 8 years. Shows the other one, 360. So you're selling a rent roll at 3360. So we had applied, so 2022, we applied 1322 square feet, and the city was 1297. We're applying 1437 now. The assessor is at 1437. So we don't dispute the assessor's rent. We dispute the assessor's vacancy, 25%. We use the assessor shortfall, $14, and the cap rate 7%, and the non-recoverable 3%. So basically, the only thing we dispute of the assessor is the vacancy. So if you look at the bottom in red, the assessor is OFB. We dispute vacancy only, so we're applying 25% instead of 12%. The next page, page 16, that's the retail. So it is occupied for hard rate foods, good hair, and they have $21 gross, $21.61. So we have unrecovered expense $7. So we give it a rent of $14, $14.61. The vacant space, we're giving it $13. Previously vacated in 2020, 2021. It was $842 gross, so they were not getting much rent at that point in time. So we're giving it lower rent. It's a small space, so it's, I guess, difficult to rent. So the assessor's got 1402 rent, and we're the assessor's at 1394, and we're slightly higher at 1402. So we're basically same as the assessor. They have 5% vacancies, so basically we have the same vacancy as the assessor. We have the same shortfall, and we dispute the cap rate of 610, which is relatively low, especially for retail in an office building. So it's harder to rent, so a higher risk. So we dispute the vacancy 7%, and we dispute the rentable area to 758. The assessor at the bottom he shows at 3058. And past rent roll, a few years back, they had, I believe, 500 or 550 for the vacant space, and then subsequently changed it to 250. So the rent roll has reduced the amount of rentable area there. And that would be my report.
Okay, questions, Mr. Brockus?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, Ms. Linklater, questions?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, just for clarification, I just need to locate the page. Mr. Dupont, on page 13, just at the top of your chart, I'm not sure if I misheard you, but I thought you said there was no parking on site?
Yeah, I did see that, but then it says indoor 208. Yeah.
Yeah, just querying that one.
Yeah, I guess it's a typo from another property. Yeah, no, we're showing 208 parking stalls.
But you don't know if they're there or not?
Yeah, they're there. The assessor has indoor parking 194, which an 8 outdoor.
Okay, so there is parking.
There is parking, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, questions?
Just to further on Mrs. Linklater's question, where is that parking in your numbers here?
Oh, it's line 10 on page 13.
Okay. Okay, yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we are allowing for income, so so there is parking on site for sure.
Yeah, okay, I see it. That's all I had, thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions, so thank you very much. We will go to 30 Carlton. And let me open the files first. All right, Mr. Baracus, on 30 Carlton.
Okay, file 24-1286, roll number 12092633000 30 Carlton Street. We got two classifications here. We got residential 1,017,000. We've got commercial at 362,000 for a total valuation of 1,379,000. It's a 1954 three-story building. 11 suites, 5 outdoor parking. For the residential, it looks like it's a cap rate issue. So I'll just tailor my presentation to that. You go to page 3, you can see the income workup. It's 11 one-bedrooms. Average monthly rent assigned, $848.70. For a gross potential of 112.28, and with the other model parameters and a gap of 4.95, you get a market value per suite of 92,454. And you've got your retail parameters here. Gross potential 25,000 with a 6.25 cap. We're at, pardon me, 362,000 on the commercial portion. Page 4 shows the rents that are being assigned. We got $18.09 net on the retail. The rent comparables on page 5. You can see here. I mean, rent's not in dispute on this, so you can see how we're falling in line with the comparables in the neighborhood. Comparable leases on page 6. support the net modeled rent. Cap rate evidence is on page 7 and 8. Then on page 10, what we got here is we got the income and expense statement. So it says the rental income is 147, which is a lot more than what the model has assigned it. We got 112 on the gross potential. They're reporting 147 before laundry. This is residential rent. And I mean, there is a discount there's concessions of almost $6,000, but still that's a lot higher than what the model's cranking out. So again, there's some pictures on page 13. So yeah, 3-story walk up, looks like it's got like a little store on the main floor there. It's on Carlton Street in the Broadway, Cinnabon area. Overall valuation per unit's only 92,000. That's my evidence. Thanks.
Okay, question, Mr. Dupont.
On the page 10, where you showed the income, 147,000. I don't see any commercial income. So
That's true.
So would the commercial be included in the 147,000?
I was trying to figure that out, but it says residential. It might be. I'm not sure though. They are indicating residential though, so maybe you have more information on that than I do.
And would you agree there's no recoveries from the commercial shown on here on the income?
Yeah, I don't see any.
I had asked you to check the 2019 income and expense to show that where it showed that the lease was gross. Did you check that?
Yeah, I really didn't. Are you talking about what bunch of emails you sent me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get to this one, unfortunately. I was trying to do as much as I could over the weekend, but this wasn't one that I touched.
Merits of your time. Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, questions.
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Linklater.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I just got a question on the cap rate there. You're at what, 4.95, which is,
Yeah.
you know, towards the lower end of the scale. What makes this a superior property then?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's only got 11 units. So at its price tag, it's more accessible for smaller, lack of a better word, the smaller fish to kind of get in the bidding action on the property. Unlike the other properties on the docket, big high rises where it's just institutional investors who would be going against each other on it. Like this one is more accessible. You get a couple of friends together looking to invest, and they're able to get in on the action. It's in Broadway, Assiniboine. So it's kind of like an area of town where they can't just make more of, in terms of like you can build out into a field till the cows come home. But there's a limited amount of available land in downtown Winnipeg. So in my mind, it's an attractive investment for those reasons.
Okay, but wouldn't a small investor then have less access to capital? And that wouldn't they probably have to pay a higher mortgage rate than a large REIT or something like that? And they'd be more sensitive to overpaying for a property?
Well, what I'm saying is that there'd just be a larger total pool of people potentially purchasing it. So I'm not saying that it would be purchased by necessarily a smaller fish, so to speak. But they would be like in on the action, which would drive the price up. So it's something that's more manageable for a greater number of people, given its size.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Dupont, your presentation, please.
Oh, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Could I just redirect to Mr.
absolutely.
Barakis and ask a couple of questions?
Yep.
Mr. Barakis, I'm going to assume that you did not have a chance to inspect this property.
No, I did not.
Do you have any notes on when it was last inspected?
Not in my brief, but I could take a quick look right now. Is there something in particular you're interested in?
Well, just sort of following up on the chair's questions, because this is a 1954 building. You haven't given it an effective age. So I'm just wondering the condition, because I just noticed on your brief, it appears that there are some rental incentives.
Well, I mean, that's not something that's that's not something that's abnormal when you look at the way apartments are managed. I mean, that's often a way for, there's rent control, right? So if you set the rent at a certain level and then you deduct using various rent incentives, that'll keep the rent higher than rather being trapped under like just a flat market rent, and then they just have to ride the rent incentives up unless it was renovated. Now, we don't have any record of renovation on this property, and you can see from the outside, it looks pretty original. So we don't have an effective age on it.
Okay. So, sorry, so nothing in your notes as to when it was last inspected?
I just looked. I don't have a recent inspection
Okay.
notes on it.
All right. I thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, and Mr. Dupont, you can begin your presentation.
Yeah, I think we should go straight to the appendix, page 7. So I had noticed that the same as Matt, in their statements, they don't show any commercial income. And I asked the owner, please advise why there's no commercial income. And they said, controller says, see attached updated profit and loss. Commercial rent was recorded as residential rent in the system. I have adjusted that so that in the next page 8, they show 119,618 residential income and 27,720 commercial. So versus what the assessor had, 147, which was the original statement by the owner. And then I asked him to clarify. It has now been clarified. And there's no commercial recoveries. And I did check the questionnaires, and every year they have similar statements like that. But in 2019, where they had the handwritten questionnaires and where it asked which expenses are paid by the landlord, it showed that the landlord paid for all expenses except hydro for the commercial space. So it goes back a while, but it does match the fact that the statement shows no recovery, so that they're metered for hydro, and the landlord pays the rest. So if you go back to the beginning, page 2, page 1, it shows the photos. It shows a little walk-up apartment block with no amenities, no balcony, very simple, very old. Shows where the location is on page 3 and 4 in the maps. Then the spreadsheet, page 5. So then you can see the line 1, it showed 119,693. We have that in red. So that's what we got from the last minute statements we got. Line 13 for 2021 was 124,000 after adding the 27,000 commercial income. Line 11, the 2020 and 21 statements showed the commercial income. 2022 did not until after I got it at the last minute. So then the 124, you have to subtract the 27,000 in commercial income. So they're below 100,000. The assessment, the assessor's using 107. So I decided to go with the assessor's effective gross income, which is likely a bit on the high side because you're probably getting less than 100,000. Nevertheless, I got that at the last minute and I have to do something. So I accepted the assessor's effective gross income. Now, same thing with the expenses. Shows the expenses, what the actual are for each year. They're 62, 78, 65. This would include some of the commercial. It's difficult to remove the commercial from that. So what I did, line 33, is I decided to agree with the assessor's NOI. They're using 56,000 in the expenses, and the actual expenses are 62, 78, and 65. So after we adjust for commercial, we'll probably be close to the 56,000. So that's why we agreed to the 50,357 in NOI. Now we use a cap rate 5.75 versus the assessor 4.95. I should mention to the board that we put in a cap rate study, all the properties here today, and we haven't presented that yet. So I'd like to say that we vented that into evidence. I don't want to go through the whole study, so I'm just saying it's entered evidence. But for that age group, the cap rate that Altus has for that age group is 5.75 plus. So we given it the cap rate that we give for for 1954 buildings. So that's why we get to a value 876. And I would suggest to you that if we did went to the trouble of going to the revenues and expense, we would have higher or lower EGI and lower NOI. So when we accept the assessor's NOI, I believe we're being quite conservative. And the page 6 is the commercial. So the contract rent is from 2016 to 2026. It shows there on the spreadsheet of page 6. The base rent is $20 per square foot. And the rent roll notes show that it includes property tax, insurance, management, water, HVAC, waste, and snow. Tenant pays their own metered electricity only. So $20 is the gross or semi-gross or almost gross. We're allowing $6 expenses, which would make it 14, but we actually rounded to $15 a square foot. So that's the rent we give on this, and that comes to $20,790 per square foot in rent. If you look at the bottom of that spreadsheet, the assessor is allowing $25,073, which is $1,809 per square foot. So we dispute the rents. So the assessor is $1,809, and they're paying $20 gross. So I believe the assessor's rent is clearly too high. We agree with the assessor's vacancy 5%. We agree with their shortfall and their non-recoverable expense. The cap rate we disagree with. They have a low cap rate of 6.25. So this is just a local grocery store at the bottom of an old apartment block. I don't think we should have a premium cap rate on that. So we believe a cap rate of 7.5 is more reasonable for this. Besides the cap rate, we have notes. In 2023, we applied 7.5. The city had 6.75. And now there's 6.25 to a lower cap rate. So their cap rate is quite high. So I believe our value of 249 is reasonable. We're disputing the rent and the cap rate. And that's my report. And thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Brackus, questions?
I do not, thank you.
All right, Ms. Linklater, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Arnell, questions?
Not at this time, thanks.
Okay, thank you, and I have no questions. Except what's your total valuation then, Mr. Dupont?
Oh, I just closed it. Yeah.
I knew I'd catch you.
You want me to reopen it or you want to?
I guess I can add them up, I guess.
No, I don't add them up. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm reopening. Okay, so. $876 for residential and $249. 1,125,000.
Okay, thank you. Thank you then. Does anybody need a break or can we power through the last two items on the agenda?
I was just gonna request just a short recess.
Okay,
Five.
we will take a break till 3:25 then. All right, thank you. Our next property is 464 St. Mary Avenue. So, Mr. Brackus, you can begin.
Thank you. File 24-1441, roll number 12091515000, 464 St. Mary Avenue. We got two classifications here. Total value is $3,563,000. We got $1,784,000 on the office, and we've got $1,779,000 on the apartment. 1927 to 1930 effective year built, so we really don't have any sort of effective year built on it. 22 suites, no parking on the PID. We've got for the request for income information on it. So on page 3, we've got 22 suites, 10 bachelor, 9 1-bedroom, 3 2-bedroom. There's also some parking income. They rent out the parking spots. That is not in dispute unless something's changed, so I won't talk about that. The average monthly rent assigned by the model is $779,099. That's something that, unless something's changed, is not in dispute either. 52% expense ratio and a 5.35 cap comes out to $1,779,000 on the apartment. Then you also have the office parameters in the middle column here with a 5.25 cap. The market income broken down on page 4. So we've got $11.43 on the office, which I believe is owner occupied, so they're not like collecting rent on it. Rent per stall, $45 is not in dispute. Rent comparables are on page 5. Rent's not in dispute. The comparable leases from the surrounding area range from 9 to 17 we're on the lower end of the scale there at 1143. It's owner occupied, so it's not like we can take a look at what they're collecting. App rate stuff is on page 8 and 9. And then we have on page 10 a permit. Landlord improvements to the lower level and main floor of the four-story mixed-use building. Partitioning of the main floor office area and establishing a separate commercial tenant space in the lower level for future tenants. So they did some work, which you'll see in the pictures that follow the permit here, 300,000 in 2010. General location here, St. Marian Memorial. And some pictures of the exterior on page 12. Sure, we've all seen this building driving southbound. On page 13, shows the income statement that they submitted to us. And there's some line items, I'm not quite sure what they are. Depreciation, it's not something that would be included. I'm not sure what rent is, how that expense is factored in. Maybe that's like concession or free rent. I'm not sure about that. Or maybe it has something to do with the owner occupied commercial. It does say rental of 285, 548, which is quite a bit higher than our agreed upon rent. And it's also quite a bit higher than what if you took the rent roll on the next couple pages here, if you took the total 16,740.51, and if you multiply that by 12, you'd be right in the ballpark of the rent that the city is producing, and also the rent that Altus is agreeing with. So I'm not sure why they would be reporting this much rent if the building is owner occupied, if those commercial units are owner occupied. So I don't understand where that additional revenue would be coming from, because it's the parking spots aren't making up that much of a difference, if you know what I mean, in terms of what they're collecting. So I'm not really putting any weight on this income and expense statement that was submitted to the city. I'm just going with the model. And we got some pictures starting on page 18 of the inside. So 18 to 19 is a residential unit, and then rather 22 shows a washroom. And then on 21 and onwards is just some pictures of the commercial, just to see the quality of the commercial area that we're looking at here, the office space. And that rounds out the brief. That's my evidence. Thanks.
Any questions, Mr. Dupont?
Yes. Are you not aware that they're actually paying rents? The entity that's borrowing is different than the entity that owns the building.
I'm not aware of that now.
The rents they show in the questionnaire, $700-800. Would you agree that those are relatively low rents, indicating a lower quality, a lower condition?
Well, I mean, when I look at the pictures here, it certainly doesn't look like it's in rough shape. They haven't renovated. They're probably trapped under rent control. Might be a good candidate for renovation and getting a boost, but that's not what we're assessing. We're assessing the rents in place. And when I multiplied the total from the month end on the rent roll by 12, it came up around what the city was cranking out for the residential portion. So I think we're encompassing that just fine.
That's all questions I have.
Okay, Mr. Arnell, questions?
Have you ever inspected this property, or how old are the pictures? Do you know?
These pictures are from a website. I have not inspected the property. Personally, I have not.
You know how old those pictures are, or you don't know that?
I don't.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Linklater.
Just one quick question. Mr. Barakas, is this the former Abbott Clinic?
I do not know.
Okay. I'll direct that to Mr. DuPont. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, just looking at the pictures and it seems to still have steam heat in it. Does that be correct?
Yeah, it looks like it's got some kind of a radiant type heat.
Yeah. And the windows look like old style windows that haven't been
Yeah, yeah, we don't have any sort of effective age on it. And I mean, like, it doesn't look like completely, I guess, like the 20s, but I mean, it's not deserving of any sort of effective age. And I think that's reflected in the rents that it's collecting and the rents that the city's putting out. It'd probably be actually anyone who would want to like buy this place might buy it with the thought of renovating it and getting a rent control exemption. But I mean, that's not how we're valuing it. So there's definitely that sort of potential upside to the investment.
okay. And question, it's not far from the area when there's been a lot of new apartment development in that area. Would that affect the market for these apartments and that sort of thing?
Well, I think those newer ones that are going up are probably in competition with each other. The rental rate to get into this one and the rental rate for someone looking to get into a newer one, I would say it's two different tenant pools. So I wouldn't say they'd be competing with one another.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, Mr. DuPont, you can give us your presentation.
Okay, let me pull it up here. Yes, if you go to the first page, you'll see that the assessment in the apartment, we're asking for a relatively large reduction from 1779 to 1225, and the commercial from 1611 to 891. And we don't dispute the parking. So it shows there. Then we have the photos. It's a 1927 building, and I did check bunch of old reports to see who was there before, and I don't know whether Abbott Clinic was there before, but it seems familiar. Sussex has taken over for quite a while. In past appeals, we got the layout square footage for the commercial suites. We had established the rentable area on past appeals. And you have the maps there, page 9, etc. But we don't dispute the the parking values. It's a bit complicated with a few rent rolls, etc., and the rent part of the land from the city, etc. But we worked out the values on the commercial parking in the parking lot in the past, and we don't dispute it this time around. We went to a lot of trouble in the past doing that, and now we're accepting it. So this building on the cap rate, so it has 9 bachelors, which is 43% of total, 9 one bedroom, which is another 43%, and 3 2-bedroom is 14%. So it's got a poor suite mix. There's virtually no parking for residential. And it is in 1927. The assessor has not given an effective age because the rents are still $700-800. So they got no amenities, no yard. So we believe that it should be a higher cap rate. Our 2020 cap rate was 6.6. Now we're using 6%. So if you look at the line, page 16, sorry. Now they show 2022 284,000 in income, which includes residential and commercial. In the past, 2021, they were showing, I believe, 88,000 in rent that Sussex paid. Basically, the Sussex pays to as a tenant, they pay to a property that is owned separately from Sussex Realty that has different ownership, slightly different ownership, but it's not fully arm's length. For that reason, because it's not fully arm's length, they actually have negotiated a lease and they're paying rent. So the 284,000 does include rent. In the past, it was 88,000. I had to check that out. So that it would leave close to 200,000 in residential. And the assessor line 13 had 198,504 for residential. So we decided to agree with that. It's a bit complicated to separate residential and commercial income and expenses. Now, we didn't go to the trouble of separating the expenses. We had done that in the past, and that we had done by, if you look on top, the commercial is 29.5% of the area, residential 70.5%. So certainly expenses, we would use 70.5% for the residential. And to line 31, in 2023, we had gone to major exercise to get the expenses, and we had stabilized 123,856. So for this time round, we stabilized 125,000, similar to expenses we used for 2023, where we had gone to the whole exercise of determining the expenses. So that's in line with what we had before. That line 32, that creates an expense ratio of 63%. The assessor's got only 52.1%. And this is a 1927 building, so we'll have higher expenses. It's not as efficient as modern. It has lower rents to start with, so they're $700-800 per suite. So I believe the expense ratio of 63% is a lot more reasonable than the 52%. The 52% they have is from a model. And I believe the model should be showing the higher expense ratio because of its age. So the net operating income line 33, we have 73,504 versus the assessor's 95. We had 68,000 in 2023. So now we have 73,504. So it's quite reasonable in relation to what we had in the past. We allow a 6% cap rate because it's 1927, and our cap rate evidence shows that we start at 6% for that age group. So we're putting at the low end of our own cap rate study. And other remarks, the board revision that came to a value of 1,030,030. So the board had agreed to our value, 1,030,030. We're now almost 20% higher, 1,225,000. And the rents up.
I will point out, Mr. Dupont, that we don't put any weight on past assessments or anything like that.
Yeah, I realize that. If you look line 13, the previous assessment was based on the 2020 values, and the rents are basically the same. They actually went down. The effective gross income line 13 went down from 292 to 286. So I believe when I come up with a value of 1,225,000, that's extremely generous. And likely if I did go through the exercise of figuring out the expenses like I had in the past, I would come to a lower value. So 1,225,000 is extremely reasonable. And 1,077,000 9 is extremely high in relation to Board of Revision decision 2023. The commercial, page 17. It's owner occupied, but 2340 square feet of that is in the basement, and that has lower value. So the assessor should be allowed for lower rent on that. So we allowed $10 per square foot on the main floor, and some dollars for the basement. We've applied the same vacancy as the assessor, $11, 11%, sorry. And we use the assessor's shortfall, but we dispute the cap rate. They're using 5.25, which is extremely low. And the rent that they have, shown at the bottom in red, it's $11.43 per square foot. They have 9,400 square feet, 9,409, which is very close to what we had, and that matches the floor layout. So we got the architect's drawings, etc. we had in the past. But we had established in the past that the basement rentable area was 2340. So that normally has a lower price. So based on that, we come to value 891,000. And we show the 2023 Board of Revision decision. It was 816 in the past. So that when we have 891, we're being very reasonable there again. That's my submission. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Baracus?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arnell,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Linklater.
I also have no questions, thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions. So we shall move to our last property, 433 Main. And I'll just open the files. Give me a moment. Okay, Mr. Baracus on 433 Main.
Okay, yeah, one second here. 433 Main. One moment. Yeah, 433 Main. File number 24-3662, roll number 13060750100. Address 433 Main Street. Got a recommendation on this property in regards to the commercial aspect of it. Gonna reduce the commercial to 3,524,000, which is the applicant's figure, but we're gonna keep the residential at 17,935,000. I'll just pause right there.
Okay, let me just write those down. All right, so Mr. Dupont, how do you feel about the office component, the retail component?
I agree to retail component, and I agree to the residential 17,935,000. We were asking for a small reduction, and so now we agree to the assessor's residential and the commercial rec.
Okay, so what does the total equal then, Mr. Baracus?
21,459,000.
So just for clarity, Mr. Dupont, that's the number you're agreeing to?
Yes.
All right. Any questions, Ms. Linklater?
Mr. Baracus, I'm just wondering what your reduction entails.
What the reduction
Well,
entails?
why? Sorry.
It's an agreement on overall value with the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arnell.
No questions, thanks.
All right, so that was quick and certainly as shorter than I feared it would be. Yeah. So thank you. We've now heard all the properties on today's agenda, and this hearing is now adjourned. So thank you very much for your conciseness and your presentations.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, goodbye.
Goodbye. Mr. Chair, should we break for about 5 minutes or so?
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, I'll take us offline and that'll do it.
Yep.
Thank you.